Hello there, YouTube. So, as we thought, August 1st, Regulation J got announced. But there's a twist. It's not going to be VGC. So, what is Reg J? It's basically Reg I, but instead of just two legendaries, in one of the slots it can be a mythical. If you don't know the differentiation, mythical basically just refers to the legendaries that are really hard to get. Stuff like Mew, Manaphy, Keldeo. So, before we jump into Reg J and everything, we're gonna go over this rather important part. As it, this will not be in VGC because for VGC they always banned the mythicals, not necessarily because of power level, but rather because to guarantee an even playing field, they just straight up said, okay, those only conditionally available ones, because especially back in the days, they were only done for distributions, they just banned them to make sure that no one could be like, okay, yeah, cool, I have my super broken Manaphy because I bought Pokémon Ranger and you didn't. And just made it like that. So instead of playing the rules that's going to be available in ranked battles, we're going back to Reg H. Spoiler alert, I don't like this. But yeah, let's jump into it. Reg J. So the newly usable Pokemon here, courtesy of Cerebi, are nicely listed: Mew, Jirachi, Deoxys, Fione, which I still don't consider a Pokemon, but that's a whole different discussion. Manaphy, Darkrai, so it's the return of Dark Void, baby! But thankfully still nerfed. Shaman, Arceus, which is going to be something I'm going to talk about a little more, because that thing's actually going to be broken. Keldeo, which is budget special Urshifu. Meloetta, which would be fun if it wasn't so weird. Yancy, Hoopa, Hoopa Unbound, Volcanion, Magearna, Zarude, Petra. So, as we've established, the restricted slots now include the mythicals that you can pick. It's not like you have an extra slot or anything where it says, okay, the two restricted and then there's the mythical, which means there's one problem. Most of the time, you're just gonna run into straight up Reg I teams. Why is that? Because power creep's a thing. And, yeah. As we can say, Jirachi, the 100 throughout the course base stat mons are already not really serious contenders. Deoxys is sad but one, because Deoxys is a psychic type, very offensive Pokemon that it has the exact same speed as Calyrex, Shadow Rider. And if you're already having to risk running the speed tie with Cali Shadow, you might as well do it with your own Cali Shadow. So, yeah. Darkrai is going to be one of those that is just going to be more annoying than it's going to be strong, because I can promise you people are going to run Gravity Hypnosis stuff on ladder. It's not going to be 100% accurate. Even with Violent, it's going to be around 92% accurate, but even then, 92% accurate Dark Voids on a Pokemon that can also put out some pressure thanks to actually having stats compared to, well, Smeargle. Not particularly fun. Shaman Skyform would almost be good if there wouldn't be like a lot of stronger, faster Pokemon that got introduced during the Switch era. So yeah, I love Meloetta, but Relic Song is just a little too weird in how it functions and how the stats change to do anything. Hoopa Unbound is funny, because Hoopa Unbound's signature move breaks through White Guard, which means that Hoopa Unbound is going to be a fun option for some hard Trick Room comms, even though it's not going to be necessarily the greatest. Volcanion, also kind of funny. It would be theoretically good against Kyogre if it could do anything into it. Then there's the big one, Magearna. This thing is going to be the reason why Hard Tiara is going to be very obnoxious, because if you're not familiar with it, Soul Heart is a funny ability where every time a Pokemon faints, regardless of what side, and regardless of how it's KO'd, it's gonna give it a special attack boost. which is kind of significant when you're starting out with 130 base. and as a Pokemon with 65 speed stats, you are going to be thrilled to hear that it gets access to Trick Room. So yeah, outside of Arceus, which is God of Pokemon, Majoran is probably going to be the one that is the most reasonable to run in more serious teams. Now, it's basically Zarude, also not a real one Petarant. Besides the fact that it has like one of the highest physical defense stats, it just doesn't do all that much. This is honestly basically just a lot of yapping for me to say that most Mythicals aren't really worth running. Arceus is funny because it's the strongest normal type that gets extreme speed, which is going to result in stuff like Sword Stance, Extreme Speed, Clear Amulet, Terra Normal, stack all the damage you can, Chiempo next to it, Kablamo. And then there's some funny shenanigans that you can do because, well, Things gets imprisoned and gets Body Press. Which, funnily enough, right next to each other in its learns it, which means that, theoretically, you could use Arceus to disable one of the two restricteds that counter it, aka Zamazenta. So, some funny shenanigans. It's also the Ultra Toolbox of Gigadoom, because in all this glazing that we just did, we also didn't even mention that Arceus can be literally any type. So I'm not gonna hold you. I'm expecting stuff like Earthplate Arceus to pop up, just because Groudon, being the only ground type restricted, is kinda sad in a world where you have to deal with Miraidon. That's a fun one. And on the side, on Miraidon, it's also going to be the reason why Darkrai isn't super strong, because, well, electric terrain. And then one other kind of noteworthy pick is Mew, because of mechanical shenanigans. Mew has a very funny combo. Imprison, transform. So when you imprison, and then you transform, the imprison's still active. Meaning that whatever opposing Pokemon you transform into will be locked out of its entire moveset, regardless of what it is. I am not gonna front you, as broken as it sounds on paper, Mew is still not the fastest Pokemon. It has decent bulk, but not a great defensive typing with Psychic. And as we've established earlier, this eats up one of your restricted slots, which you usually want to be rather proactive. So it's going to be delegated to heavy gimmick tier. If Mythicals were a separate slot, Mew would be a menace to society, because all of a sudden you can have, well, a counter-restricted potentially in stuff like TR comms, not TR, Tailwinds, or just Redirection, anything that enables it. But honestly, all of this analysis goes a bit out of the window when you consider that this is not going to be how we play VGC, because Reg H is back, and I don't like it. Now, I know this is a format that a lot of people hold near and dear because more legends are broken, and unfortunately at this point in time, thanks to things like Urshifu and Tornadoes existing, the legends kinda suck. But, to be quite frank with you, I would have loved to see a Regulation H that would also allow for Paradox Pokemon. I actually made a prediction video about this in my YouTube if you care to check that one out. Because, honestly, the Reg H meta was kind of obnoxious thanks to a certain Pokemon. Namely, stuff like this distinguished gentleman right there. Diaclaw is one of the single most annoying moves to deal with in competitive Pokemon history. It is so... It's the closest we've gotten to Dark Void Smeargle in a while, and you do not want to touch that with a 6-foot pole. I don't like Sneasler, I don't like dealing with it. Now, it is true, at the end of Reg H's life cycle, people figured out how to deal with it quite well. There is tools for it, but I don't like the fact that even during team building, you have to consider so hard how you best deal with Sneasler. Just because the power to randomly sleep, or even just para, can be game-decidingly strong. And then there's the other one, Rain. Rain in Reg H is not fun to deal with. Can also slot Sneasler in fantastically, by the way, but this is definitely the format that showed that the Electro Shot is not a balanced move. Even, I remember, even during the initial announcement, I didn't think Electro Shot should be anywhere over 100, and now it is, well, we know what Electro Shot looks like these days. It's a lot of yamming, but at the end of the day, it still allows for some creative stuff. You can run things like Charizard, as Marco Fierro has more than evidently shown. But, yeah, I suppose that is one of the things I want to say, is like, just because there's no legends in it doesn't mean that it's particularly great. Just because some of the non-legendary Pokemon, especially ones that have been introduced recently, are kinda sorta not very fun to deal with. Archaludon and Sneasler being the biggest offenders, but even stuff like Ursaluna, Blood Moon, a bit iffy. Even Basculation in this format is kind of annoying because it just hits so hard. But yeah, I didn't want to moan too much about Reg H because at the end of the day, it's still a playable format. It's not like it's horrible, it's just that there's just two Pokemon that I really don't like dealing with, and I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. But there's one thing in particular that missed me a bit about the situation. Now, I know that people don't necessarily put a lot of their practice time on ranked ladder, but one of the gripes that I have with Pokemon like this is that, well, how are you gonna practice? Like, if we assume that you only wanted to use those official sources to practice, then you're kinda out of luck now. You can't go into ranked battles to prepare yourself for competitions. There is no direct in-game tool that lets you just queue into, okay, I wanna go and ladder Reg H, which means that now they're basically just saying, yeah, if you don't play Showdown or go to your locals whenever those start, and even that isn't an option because for VGC they're inactive right now, so if you in August want to prepare for the upcoming regionals that are happening in like Monterrey or Frankfurt at the start of the season, which are happening like 2 weeks into September, you barely have any opportunity to really do so. Because first of all, because, well, there is no locals, and even if there were, there would be Reg I. So that again goes into why I hope that Champions becomes the main competitive game, because yeah, having the central hub that is not bound by like the lifespan of each individual generation, so what's in those specific games, to just have to focus on competitive battling and making sure that people would actually have those options would be fantastic. Like, I know it's not confirmed, but in the back of my head I am heavily assuming, hoping that Champions might even have a best of 3 ladder. Imagine that, being able to practice for tournaments by having the same mode the tournaments use for your ranked battles, even if it's just one of the queues available, would be kind of nice. Again, this is just... I'm just a bit miffed about the whole situation because, well, it also feels like a short-term solution because it said until November is when Reg H is going to be. Like, now we don't know if that means until like the start of November, and then Legends ZA comes up, because that's also another speculation in the head. It's like November is a bit of an odd one because that means it's like potentially just a 2-month format. So the only justification for that would be like maybe there is new forms from ZA available that are going to be transferable to Scarlet Violet, which could either mean that, okay, maybe they're just going to patch Megas in, or what I'm still hoping for, regional forms or new Pokemon that you can then transfer to mix things up at least a little bit. But yeah, the conclusion of all of this is that I really wish we could have found something new in terms of regulations that would actually be the tournament standard. And once more, hopefully Champions fixes some of the problems that we have. This was just a bit off the rip, me talking about the announcement, because Legendary Gacha was announced today, so if you've been watching until the end of the video, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!